Good day. In this video, I'm going to focus on the use of quotation marks in writing. Here we have a paragraph that we need to examine carefully, and we are going to insert punctuation marks where necessary. One of the things I must indicate that whenever you have a passage, a story that consists of various speakers, each individual, each speaker should utilize a separate paragraph. Of course, the individual's first word must begin with a capital letter. So let us examine this passage and we will decide which aspects of this passage should be in a separate paragraph and where our quotation marks should be. The instructions say, rewrite the following conversation. Make correct paragraph divisions and use the right punctuation marks. So let us look at the various speakers that we have here. What makes you go to a doctor? Asked Mary. So this line is only what Mary would have said. What makes you go to a doctor? It's a question. And here we see the quotation tag at the end. And in my previous video, you would have seen that the quotation tag is actually what we call the explanatory words. It tells you how Mary did it. This time it was a question. So she asked, what makes you go to a doctor? So I'm going to rewrite this first line, which is Mary's direct speech. I'm going to take it here. I'm going to paste it here because I'm attempting to rewrite it. So I am going to begin by indenting. To indent means to leave a space away from the margin. It's Mary's first words, so I have a capital letter. I'm going to use my quotation marks. I want to increase the size of my quotation marks so that you can see it. What makes you go to a doctor? We need to have a small a for asked Mary, never a capital A here because the sentence has not ended. What makes you go to a doctor? Asked Mary. Now the sentence has ended. We have our full stop. There is another speaker. I tend to go, said Judy. So it's no longer Mary speaking. I tend to go, said Judy, only when I am very sick. And she continues, I don't like to spend the money and I don't like to spend the time. So we realize that this second statement comes from another speaker who is Judy. What do? We need to indent again. So we are going to come here to indent. You leave some space away from the margin. We have our quotation mark. And we are going to have Judy's first words, I tend to go. We need to have a capital I. I tend to go. Let's just copy what's there to make it easier for us. So I'm going to copy this. I tend to go, said Judy, only when I'm very sick. I don't like to spend the money. I don't like to spend the time. So I'm going to copy this right here. I'm going to paste it over here. Writing the same thing over. Let's just delete this. Let's try again. I tend to go, said Judy, only when I'm very sick. I don't like to spend the money. I don't like to spend the time. And we are going to paste it right here. So let's bring this back up here. So here we go. So we need to open up with her direct conversation. I tend to go. We're going to enclose the first part of her conversation. I tend to go, said Judy. Said Judy is the quotation tag, but she's not finished with her conversation. So you want to continue with a small o because Judy is saying, I tend to go only when I'm very sick. So I tend to go. There's a brief interruption. So we are going to continue by opening our quotation marks again. So I tend to go. Let's increase the size of this so that you can see it. I tend to go. There's a comma after that go. Said Judy. There's another comma and a small o because she's continuing her conversation. I tend to go, said Judy, only when I'm very sick. There's no need to put quotation marks. Some students put quotation marks here and then they start again with another quotation mark. You should never have any double quotation marks next to each other. That would be incorrect. So we need to ensure that the person's conversation has ended, and only when it has ended, we put our final quotation mark. I tend to go, said Judy, only when I'm very sick. She continues, I don't like to spend the money and I don't like to spend the time. This is all she says, so we are going to end it with a full stop and we are going to enclose our full stop. Let's just increase the size so that you can see. We have another speaker who is Angie. Here we have the quotation tag at the beginning. Angie said. We also call that the explanatory words. Angie said. So we know we should have a comma here. What does she say? I make an appointment after I have exhausted my home remedies. Is that all she says? Yes. So I'm going to take what Angie said. I'm going to copy it so that we can arrange it in a separate paragraph. So here, Judy has ended. We want to have what Angie says in another paragraph. So we are going to indent. We are leaving a space again. We are going to remove this thing. Angie said, we need to have a comma because we are going to introduce Angie's direct words. Open our quotation marks. Angie said, I make an appointment after I have exhausted my home remedies. And since she has ended her conversation, we need to enclose her full stop with the quotation mark that ends her conversation. Angie said, I make an appointment after I have exhausted my home remedies. What comes next? Well, said Jim, I am distrustful. Is that all Jim says? No. Well, said Jim, I am distrustful. I go to the doctor if I already know what I have and what the cure is, but at no other time. Is that all what Jim says? Yes, because here you all sound ridiculous. This is what Lee says. So let us take what Jim says, and don't forget it's a new speaker. So we have to put what Jim says in a new paragraph. We are not going to continue here. We want to go into a new paragraph. We are going to indent by leaving a space as usual. We are going to place what Jim says here. We are going to prepare to put our quotation marks. Well, said Jim. It's his first words. We need to use a capital letter for our W. Well. We need to have a comma. Well. And we need to enclose the well. Well, said Jim. He's not finished. Well, said Jim. Well, in other words, Jim is saying, well, I am distrustful. So, well, said Jim. And since we have the quotation tag breaking the sentence, it is okay to have another set of quotation marks. Well, said Jim, I am distrustful. I cannot include quotation marks here and continue with saying what Jim has said. That will be incorrect because Jim is saying I go to the doctor, so there's no need to have double quotation marks. So we are going to continue all of what Jim has said and then we enclose it with our other set of quotation marks. Well, said Jim, I am distressful. I go to the doctor if I already know what I have and what the cure is, but at no other time. Jim has ended his conversation, so we need to enclose it with quotation marks. Who is the next speaker? Lee comes in and Lee says, "You all sound ridiculous," said Lee. This time, the quotation tag is at the end. So we are going to put Lee's conversation in a new paragraph as usual, new speaker. We are going to have it right here. So we are going to copy what Lee says. "You all sound ridiculous," said Lee. He also says, "Don't you realize how important your health is?" So I'm going to take what Lee has said to rearrange it. New paragraph. So we are starting. "You all sound ridiculous," said Lee. We are going to end what he said. "You all sound ridiculous," said Lee. We need to end the sentence. This is what Lee says. Then he continues. "Don't you realize how important your health is?" So we are realizing that Lee says two complete sentences, so there's no need to put a comma after Lee. "You all sound ridiculous," we end it, said Lee, small s, and he has another sentence. So we are going to open the quotation marks, capitalize the don't you realize how important your health is, and we are going to enclose Lee's final statement. So this is a correct version of our first paragraph that we were introduced to. So let's review to ensure that we have no errors. "What makes you go to a doctor?" asked Mary. "I tend to go," said Judy, "only when I'm very sick. I don't like to spend the money and I don't like to spend the time." Angie said, "I make an appointment after I have exhausted my home remedies." "Well," said Jim, and this quotation mark needs to enclose the well. "Well," let's just increase the size. "Well," said Jim. You need to have your comma because you are introducing the second part of his statement. "Well," said Jim, "I am distrustful. Full stop. I go to the doctor if I already know what I have, comma, and what the cure is, but at no other time." He has ended his conversation. Lee comes in. "You all sound ridiculous," said Lee. "Don't you realize how important your health is?" So this is the correct version of this paragraph that we just examined above. Again, this video is meant to assist you as you go about writing your short story. Feel free to refer to this video every time you want to use dialogue, direct conversations. Again, you can ask your friends to subscribe to this channel as I will continue to post relevant information that you can use as you prepare for your English A examinations.